Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. We are streaming here on a great viewer question. We're zooming in and focusing in what's really important on the topic really of attachment and emotional connection. I think this is like a hotbed of information for people who are looking to understand a little bit more about relationship dynamics, the emotion of connection, the reciprocity, feeling that someone has reciprocated and feels your emotions with you very much in what we call limbic resonance. And I think this is a great viewer question when we talk about the disconnect that is felt with people who are toxic or who have a manipulative agenda, or furthermore, they just don't reciprocate or give time to our feelings. It's not a shared moment. There's a feeling of being ignored, of being an oversight, of being invisible. And so this gap and this delay then creates an overcompensation to try to do the job of the other person, to try to connect with them. So I think this is a great topic to really look at and examine, which is, when your feelings are not reciprocated. In other words, if you're looking, like a baby with, if you have a baby, if you and their mother, the mother will coo and go ooh and then try to tickle the baby and then try to get a feeling, and then the mother mirrors it back. It's completed. There's a complete cycle. The baby might giggle, then the mother might tickle it, and then it squirms around, and then they're both giggling and laughing, and it's reciprocated. And then that's a physiological response. So I want you to kind of look at this and understand the concept of attachment, and then sort of damaged attachment or damaged emotional connection or emotional availability, and also vulnerability. These are all topics when we look at really sort of understanding where we need to go in healthy relationships. So it's important to understand that emotions are connecting us all. It's the inner life of the person that is really where the good stuff is at. Everybody thinks, you think on advertising, it's this car or it's this watch or whatever, all the things that are items or objects that are advertised nowadays, especially now in the information age. You've got a lot of opportunity, but it's the inner life that is most important. How is your day? How did you feel? How did that meeting go? How did your walk go? How did your workout go? How did your dinner go? How did your date go? You're looking for the feelings. You're trying to connect with the person, their inner life. Yeah, you might talk about what did you wear? How's your car? Just trying to develop that understanding. And of course, male and female have different emotional constitutions or makeup, but really, there is that need for emotional connection and sharing. So, you've got that, what we call limbic resonance. I love that word, limbic resonance. So it's like in tune, you're in tune, you're on the same flow, you're on the same momentum, you're on the same tempo, or you can interject, that person can be, yielding. So there's kind of a dance, there's a metaphor, it's melodic. Once again, we've talked about that before in our previous videos about how important momentum is in relationships. And if you have that gap or delay or that unshared experience, you're going to feel that something is missing. There's going to be a break in emotional connection with others. So just looking at emotional connection. I know we talk a lot about narcissistic, psychopathic, relationships, manipulative, toxic, but and then also then how to help people who quote unquote feel like a victim or have been, feeling displaced by this and feeling really confused by their relationships, with people who they love or their family or their work or themselves, interpersonal. We really want to cover it all here on the channel. I mean, and if we talk about things that other people don't talk about, well then so be it. We're here to roll up our sleeves and get to it. But namely, when we're looking at emotional connection and why is there a breakdown? with some people. Let's call them toxic, difficult, whatever. You might have a name for the person or a multitude of names, or maybe you've experienced this with everybody in your life. You just don't feel like you have their emotional connection. There's no completion to the process. There's no feeling of shared wholeness with this person. Like going to the zoo. Oh, look at that zebra. Oh my gosh, look at that gorilla. Look at that monkey. It's you're sharing an experience. There's a feeling of completion. But then there comes, times when you're perhaps with someone who is narcissistic. Let's just throw that in there, covert narcissistic. You're going, oh my God, look at that gorilla. And the person's just kind of like, I don't think so. I'm going to go get a hot dog, or I'm going to go get a slushie. There's a feeling of missing the beat, missing the connection. You're not able to share. So that's, that damages then your attachment. It damages your bond. So it's important to kind of understand really what healthy is and what you're missing, because I feel a lot of viewers, they very much don't know what they're interested in, because they've developed a codependency in relationships with those people who are controlling, toxic, manipulative, psychopathic, powerful, power hungry, money hungry, attention hungry. You know what I'm talking about. They need it all. It's like a vacuum, and it feels unnatural. It feels uncomfortable. You feel like you've got work to do. You feel like you need to confront them. You're not being completed. Your feelings aren't being heard, listened to, processed, reacted to, and shared. Share is really the name of the game when it comes to emotions, and being able to have that bond, that connection, that security, that safety. Are we okay on A? And then how about B, and what about C? Are we okay on A, B, and C? So in other words, when you're connecting with somebody, you're laying the foundation, for the opportunity to share and be vulnerable. Now, people who are toxic, manipulative, psychopathic, narcissistic, they have their own agenda. And oftentimes, oh my gosh, we could go on for this for days, the psychopath does not have any emotions. They don't really share that. Let me appreciate this beauty in nature, like really connect. So think about things that you truly, truly love, because this will help you to get your emotions sort of moving forward. What do you really love? It could be a sonata, it could be Beethoven, it could be classical music, it could be rock, it could be, this incredible rock star, Mick Jagger. You're like, oh my God, that guy has something. I just want to drop everything and gawk. Look at this guy move. Look at him sing. Look at Keith Richards. You are enthralled and you are engaged. That's your emotion. Okay, is there something else that you connect to that strong? And it's, not just like food, or it's not just like gambling, or it's not just like sex. There are certain things that will bring about this emotional titillation or excitement. However, these things oftentimes can be devoid of connection. So really, talking about things that you truly love, and it could be sharing music, something that you appreciate, that you have a feeling and adoring for. So really kind of, I would say for the video here and the message and the takeaway is to look at what you are really enthralled in. Is it being in super shape? Is it being super buff? Are you like the most put together guy on the block? Are you like the stunning beauty? Are you the, who am I thinking of right now, who did Xanadu, and she's, like amazing shape. Olivia Newton-John, I think that's her name. You're like, she's at the red carpet and you're like, this woman has herself down pat. She's like sculpted, gorgeous. What enthralls you? What are you interested in? Some people, they love to watch the Grammys, the Emmys, the Golden Globes. Are you into these like, just incredible, talented people? Do you love to hear opera? Are you in for a good rodeo? What is your titillation? What are you all about? And that, what are you all about? That's what needs to be shared with other people. That's your emotional connection. And oftentimes it's that loop, it's that completion where you're feeling that it's reciprocated, shared, acknowledged, validated, and wow, you're sharing an emotion. There is a bond. You want to hug, kiss, high five, give a big smile, give a big OMG, text about it later. That is an emotional connection. So it's important to understand that if you've been deprived of that, you don't have enough of that, you're depleted on that, it's getting really low energy on that, then that ain't no fun, okay? Because if you're not having that, then that causes you to overcompensate. So for example, and I don't want to keep throwing this word in there, but the narcissist, the psychopath, we all know what we're talking about here. Kind of that juice that got us into the relationships. It's like there's got to be something more than having broken relationships that have led a lot of people on this journey. The spiritual journey, healing moments, being able to live fully your life without being burdened by being anxious, by being scared, etc. So it's important to understand, and that's why we talk about the recovery date. The recovery date. Everybody's like, well, what website can I find this on? I'm still in the process of curating and bringing all these together. Believe it or not, it's kind of complex. So we're doing the YouTube right now because I think that that's the most palatable for people. And so when you look at these shared experiences, when you're in a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath or someone who's manipulative, they'll see what you're excited about and go, they just won't share your enthusiasm. They don't share your passion. They don't share your oomph. They don't share your, wow, isn't that amazing? Or they can't add to it. They instead give you the look like, really, you want to watch that, or you want to talk about that, or you're excited about that, or you're feeling hurt. So this can go on the positive and negative. Really, you had a bad day? What happened? They can't share in your emotions. So energy and motion, it's energy. It's your etheric field, which stretches out 8 to 9, if you say, hey man, I can feel you, you're picking up your eyes, your ears, you're paying attention. Something's going on over there. Man, you just really handled that session very well. You are on it, man. You got my attention. That's energy in motion. Some people talk about it like you've got the wings, air under your wings, or the John Cougar Mellencamp, took my feet and sent me flying. In other words, that feeling of being uplifted and euphoric and kind of following, knowing that you've got a shared positive thing. Somebody gets you and you're just sitting on the street making it flying, or whatever his lyrics are. And I'm sure someone will post the John Cougar Mellencamp song if you know what I'm talking about. But it's that experience of having a shared emotional connection that's not damaged, that's not wrought with manipulation. And people going, withdrawing of attention, withdrawing of emotional availability, withdrawing of vulnerability. So someone who is narcissistic, who's up, 3 rungs above everybody else, and you have to only kind of like bask in their presence and add to their ego. These people oftentimes have a very difficult time being vulnerable, letting it all hang out, being vulnerable, being open. Oh my God, yeah, I had this happen to my stomach. Yeah, this happened to my family. Yeah, this happened to me. It was difficult. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to talk about, oftentimes you'll find any sort of quote unquote weak spot, or how they felt, how they felt losing their parents. You got the button lip. You're like, don't you want to share about that? And they give you the dirty look and you're like, whoa, like we just missed out on this like great opportunity to connect. And you're like, or if you're like a kid and you're like, if your parent loses their parent and you're like, you want to console them, you're, as a child, you're picking up on emotions and the mother's just like cold. Nope. And looks away, doesn't want to share the grief, is keeping it all inside, all bottled up, not being vulnerable, keeping, this perfect, pulled together situation, whatever it is, even if it's, you can tell that they're sad, they're angry at God, or, that God shouldn't have taken this person. Whatever it is that they're feeling, they're not sharing. So there's this feeling of a wall. But even worse than a wall, it's just feeling like, specifically for you, because you're annoying, you should know better than to try to share emotions with me. And so oftentimes in where we have these damaged connections or damaged attachments that we get with these people is that, people who are sensitive then become hypersensitive because they feel they have to then fill the gap. In other words, whoa, I'm trying to come at you with emotional warmth, understanding, and vulnerability, and here to help you work through it and understand. And here's the other person pushing you away, and they're pulling away, and you're like, this is like the opportunity when we're supposed to talk. Like, kids know it, married people know it, people who work together know it. Yeah, we're supposed to talk about this. We're supposed to share this. If you've been, I'm not trying to get morbid, but if you've been through to some funerals, especially people who are Hispanic, they're all kind of like sharing, all the joys, and they're crying, for the love of this person. It's very emotive, You go to some other funerals, and not that we're going to talk about this, but there's no sharing, there's a coldness. So the attachment, there can be a disorder or a disruption of this attachment bond when you're connecting. It's just not connecting. Remember the old AOL dial-up? It ain't connecting. And you're like, I'm waiting for 45 minutes to get like an internet call. Yeah, we've been there, done that. We've got that as nostalgia for all you young people who have never had AOL. Go play it online. I'm sure someone can talk to you about the days when you had to plug in your computer into the phone jack to try to get your phone, and that you'd have to hang up your phone so you can get the internet. Anyway, people used to relate a lot differently back in the day. And now, especially with text and social media and things of that nature, there's so many opportunities to share or to withdraw. So it's just like exponential bonding or exponential hurting. And there's always this kind of judgment, am I texting enough? Am I emailing enough? Am I Facebooking enough? So there's all this like crazy monitoring going on. But anyway, when we talk about being vulnerable, we're talking about communication, and being vulnerable is very difficult, I find, and very much a feeling that is not engaged in by someone who is narcissistic. People always, in other words, it's bottled up. I mean, it's pushed way down. I mean, you couldn't even tie their shoes and try to find it in their feet. It's pushed down. It's somewhere else beyond in their body. They've relegated it to the subconscious. It's locked away. It's put in a little box. It's over here and categorized, and that's going to be never dealt with. It's like way over in the attic, or like in the basement, in the wine cellar, behind the block that moves, and you can't even get at it because it's just so hidden. They hide their feelings from themselves, and therefore they hide their feelings to share with others. So you're like, something's missing. We have a gap. There's, a delay. So the vulnerability on the part of the narcissist creates this feeling of being broken or disconnected. And then comes the overcompensation. Used to remember back in the day, maybe when you were dating 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever it is, when kids started dating, and you'd get together in your little groups and talk about, are you going to talk to this guy, talk to this girl? And you say, I love him enough for the both of us. I don't even care what he does. I love him enough for both of us. And, that's all we need is my love. My love is enough. And just like it'll miraculously turn around. Back in the day when you're early in your formative years, it's very important to revisit when it comes to really looking at the cause and where we're at and why was there a disconnect and what it is to connect. It's like, let's just go for it. Let's just look at it. Let's just lay out on the table and have an honest discussion about some concepts here in relationships with these people. Now, people who are psychopathic, they don't have these emotions. They don't have the abstracts. They don't look at their national flag and feel like, I'm going to put my hand on my heart and, love our country. Patriotism, love, feelings of the sublime or awesome, or, the miracle of life. Like when you just see like an incredible sunset or incredible dawn, and you're like, whoa, I've never seen that before. That's like super exotic. Like that's thrilling. It's not really, it's more about, they're just empty. They're just depleted. It's not going on from here. It's not going on physiologically. So they got, something else. They've got a persona, a mask. There's no attachment. There's no of this limbic resonance, this connection, this being vulnerable. Once again, just to flip back, remember, the narcissist has a tough time being vulnerable, being sick, looking less than perfect, looking less than best. They always are, I'm the best. There's not much vulnerability where you're like, we're even Steven, and that's okay. Like they're not comfortable with that feeling. It makes them very uncomfortable. So when you try to challenge them to be vulnerable, oftentimes you're going to get the pushback. They're going to find reasons to push you away. I'm disappointed, yada, yada. And then they're going to be like, what do you mean hold hands for 10 minutes and walk on the beach? They're like, that's silly. That's what average people do or ordinary people do. I'm extraordinary. Like, I don't need those ordinary things. I don't need those normal activities. I don't just want to walk on a beach and smell the sea air. I want to become the number one just guitarist in this town. And I want to have media and I want to have a CD and, so you've got this grandiosity. In other words, so the grandiosity ends up really sort of destroying a lot of bonding moments because they're always on their grandiose plans, whatever it is, making their CD, they can't go to sleep, they have to do this film, they have to do this job, they have to do this, get this network marketing or whatever it is some people are into that just sends them off the rails, and they're just not emotionally available, and they don't like to be vulnerable. Slip the, you're trying to give them cold medicine. They're like, slip it under the door. I don't want anyone to see me sick. I mean, that's narcissistic behavior. They don't want to be ordinary, usual, very upsetting, they have to be the one with the humor, etc. And no one else can have the humor. It's kind of like, there's only me in this world and it's nice to have you in it. It's like it's their attitude. And so be it. That's their choice and that's their free will, and we're not here to judge, but just don't be damaged by it. Don't try to stay in a damaged attachment, or at least understand where the damage is and the why, that emptiness, and why you feel that. And so also, with someone who is psychopathic, who does not have feelings, they don't even express fear, they don't really get upset about things. It's just all about what's running their dopamine and what gets them like super reward oriented. So maybe it's an achievement at their work, maybe it's a sexual conquest, then another sexual conquest, and then it just keeps going from there. Maybe they just want to sneak around and then just break a lot of laws, and then they feel above it because they're like, it's just chaos. And so obviously it's difficult to have an emotional connection with someone who doesn't have emotions. So right there, you can understand why there's an attachment problem or an emotional connection or this feeling of completion. So once again, if you don't have that shared mirror, the mirror neurons, the limbic resonance, if you're not hitting on that with individuals, then you have to understand that that's part of where the damage and then the wound is set up in the blueprint. And it's also important to understand that then there's this overcompensation where then the person tries to love enough for the other person, tries to project their own needs onto the other. You must need this, you must need that, and then they're always other focused, and they're not getting into their own feelings of like, I like to do nothing for a little bit. I want to just look out the window. I want to, see how the leaves blow in the sunshine. And I want to, I'm interested in, going for a walk for a moment and just maybe getting into photography or thinking of a business opportunity, or I just want to clear my mind, getting into their own feelings, getting into their own body, getting into their own interests, and then being able to connect and share with others on what their true feelings are and who also can be vulnerable. Strike up conversation. Hey, I cook with this. Hey, this is what I do when it rains out. Hey, this is how I get fit and in shape. Sharing with people oftentimes becomes very difficult when you're wounded, hurt, or, what have you from other relationships. So it becomes a real barrier to the very medicine that you need, the very connection that you need. I'm not good enough, so I'm afraid to go and talk to people about some topic because they might think I'm weird, or I might sound funny, or I might be too quiet, I might be too loud, I might, so you talk yourself out of connection with other people, which is a subconscious action. You're just talking yourself out of it. And then oftentimes then people then will push they'll alienate the very people who are there to help them. And so that's part of the struggle, I think, is that when you go on your recovery date, you have to look at making some emotional connections and having some completion, feeling the completion, being able to share. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that, but doing it with people who you can have a relationship with, who you can repeat it again and again and again, so that you have this feeling of connection. I have a relationship. I can do this. So, I think that it's important to look at the reason why, and sort of, I hope this helps you to put some of the pieces together from earlier on in your life. Maybe it's a couple decades ago, maybe it's a couple months ago, maybe it's like all the way through, for yourself. But it's important to understand the cause that's created the effect of feeling empty, not loved, unseen. That feeling of being unseen, unheard, is because there isn't this, a missing out of this limbic resonance of being able to share something, either negative or positive, and either way, not being threatened either way. Not being threatened by sharing the positive, not being have a problem with sharing the negative, and not feeling threatened if someone else is talking about their day, you're taking away from me, not having those issues that you see with a lot of narcissists. They're almost in kind of like their own world when they don't have a lot of supply. They don't have people to prop them up, so there's not a feeling of vulnerability, letting your guard down, just being able to hang out, always feeling, that you have to be on hyper attuned to their needs. Part of the problem with having a damaged connection is being hyper attuned to others' needs. And are you okay there? Always other centered, where you have to kind of sink into your own feelings and know that it's important for you to become vulnerable and be with others who can be vulnerable also, so you can have that emotional connection and then work through it. And in terms of that overcompensating, if you have felt that, begin to pull it back, reel it back in, and you have to trust that other people can take care of their emotional needs. That's boundaries and that's standards. And it's also being able to temper that and being able to connect and then be okay with it, and connect and be okay. And, a lot of people who are hypersensitive, who have been wounded, tend to either, go on the extremes. When they are wounded, they get way into a relationship because, they're trying to make up for lost time, or, they're too shy, so you see these opposites going in between, between being obsessed or, not taking any action whatsoever. So it's like finding a trustworthy middle ground within yourself, so you can trust yourself to manage your connection. So to be vulnerable and then be okay and be vulnerable and then share, and be vulnerable and share. So healthy relationships will kind of be able to sail along very gently, with some ups and downs, but they kind of just have their own momentum. So it's important to understand. I hope that these videos do help. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony. Please share, please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out. Love you.